Welcome to another office hours of LinkedIn Learning. My name is Andreas Welsh. I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and today we'll talk about bringing AI agents from SAP into your business. And I thought, who better to talk about it than someone who's also a LinkedIn Learning instructor and has been one for a long time, focusing on SAP specifically. Justin Valley. Hey, Justin, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Andreas. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about the brave new world with you.
Awesome. Hey, we're just a couple of weeks after SAP's big event, Sapphire, in Orlando, where SAP made some big announcements, talked about a new vision for what they call the autonomous enterprise. Everything is now about AI, about agents, about its co-pilot, Joule. And it seems like it's a long overdue rehaul of that vision of how to bring AI into the enterprise, of how to create more value when it seems like everybody else is like chopping at the bits basically these days. What are you seeing? I mean, you're not just a trainer, you're also a consultant. You help businesses go live with S4HANA. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a tale of two stories where you have the what SAP and what SAP marketing is talking about, like all the exciting new advances, and then what I'm seeing on the ground a lot is these really large companies are either too busy with their ECC to S4 upgrades to get into the AI stuff, or they're waiting for somebody else to go first. So there's a lot of talk of Joule, but I haven't seen a ton of Joule being used at the enterprise level. I do feel like with the announcement at Sapphire that some of that really could start showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, every time I see things like Joule and I see this AI vision coming to life, I get a little excited because maybe some of you might not know this, but I spent 23 years at SAP, and together with my team back in 23, we were the ones launching Joule and creating the initial messaging around business AI and what that all is about. So it's exciting to see how that's evolving. But like I said, when I have conversations too, a lot of them seem to be a lot more focused on how do I get from where I am to where I should be, and the migrations and things. But I mean, when we talk about agents, I also see there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fear in general in business, not just when it comes to SAP and running core processes, but what does it mean? What does it mean for me? Am I still going to have a job? How is this going to change? What are you seeing from your vantage point there?
Yeah, I do think that there's a little bit of hesitation, especially when it comes to like, for example, I was working on a materials management course recently and talking about how AI is going to integrate in there. And one of the places that it is mostly available now is in master data. So create me a business partner, and you tell Joule in natural language, use these attributes and create me a business partner. That said, it is the master data, and organizations are really hesitant to just say, hand over the reins and say, go out there and create this, because it's so important with all the downstream impacts, as you well know, right? So I think there's a little bit of excitement because it's going to take a lot of the manual work away, but there's also a lot of hesitancy to say, yeah, here's the keys, go and do this for me.
And I think so, and understandably so, right? Because you do have your business applications, your enterprise applications, your ERPs, your CRMs for a good reason, and that is so you run the same process in a very predictable and repeatable way. So you mitigate your risk, it's audible, and all these things. And then we're introducing these components that are probabilistic, that we don't necessarily know exactly why they're making a decision, or if it's always the right decision.
Yeah.
Now, you've been a LinkedIn Learning instructor for a while now, right? Since when? When did you start?
I think we're going on almost 10 years now, so it's been
Wow.
quite a few iterations there. Yeah.
Okay. And you have a bunch of courses on the platform, right? Helping individuals learn more about S4HANA and some other products. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So my flagship course is S4HANA Essential Training. And basically that is a broad overview for folks that are just getting into the software for the first time, or they want to see what the different modules are and how they all fit together, and then some basic navigation. And then you got the 3 courses listed here, which I love. The follow on to the essential training is the Beyond the Basics course.
Mhm.
And then all my other courses are module based. So for example, there's SAP production planning, learning SAP financials, and all these courses are in
S4HANA. Fantastic. And doing any kind of AI always comes back to S4HANA, to the different modules. So it's always good to learn more about them, or even branch out and see what additional modules have to offer there. For me, I've been focusing quite a lot on how do you bring AI agents actually into your business, and what changes as a leader when you're asking people to take on these kind of technologies, to invite them into your team, basically. And so from preparing your organization to leading through the disruption, to also figuring out how do we use this without creating low quality output, because we're still accountable at the end of the day. And so, folks, we invite you to also connect with us on LinkedIn. And we're both quite active there, outside of LinkedIn Learning as well. And always excited to make new friends and see what's happening in your part of the world and the industry too.
Totally. I love I was looking at your course titles again, and I'd just love to know what's the attitude towards. My background's in organizational change management, so I'd love to know what the attitudes are towards this massive change from what you're seeing.
Yeah, so the courses have been out since the end of 24, since last year roughly. And it's incredible seeing the feedback, seeing the uptake of those courses. One of them has more than 50,000 learners. One is close to 50,000. The other one just crossed 16, 17,000 in a very short period of time. So I see people are eager to learn about this, and especially this part of change management, and giving leaders the frameworks and tools to navigate this change is so critical. So a lot of good feedback there, that it helps them prepare their organization, prepare their teams, and be more confident, because at the end of the day, we're in uncharted territory, really, right? For many of us, this is a huge transformation of how businesses run, and it comes with a lot of questions, for sure. Yeah.
Totally. Like the scariest part of change is the unknown part, right? So if you can be a flashlight onto what's going to come next and how people might react, I think that's huge.
Yeah. Now, question for you. I mean, there's so much innovation coming out, and obviously as SAP has been pushing out innovation on a very rapid schedule. How do you stay on top of what's available, what's usable, what's useful? What do you advise your customers do?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot coming out of SAP marketing, and there's like all these press releases, and trying to translate what that means for our customers, who are usually SAP customers are usually going to be at least 6 months at minimum behind what the announcements are. So I do feel like I have to do a little bit of translation, where I set myself a Google alert for any SAP news that comes up, and I review those, and it's a lot of it is like, well, that's maybe not important, that's not maybe important. But then you see the Sapphire announcement about the autonomous enterprise. That feels like a big shift, technically and in attitude. And that leads me to post about it and share it with my network, and that post also got a lot of engagement, because people are really interested about what that means for their organizations, what that means for their teams, what that means for themselves.
Sounds like you're translating a lot of that too, right? From what is being said here to what does it mean for you, and what's actionable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's this attitude of like, is the autonomous enterprise going to mean I'm never in SAP putting a transaction code again, where I'm like creating a sales order? Is that going to go away? And I think people are not really sure. I have a strong opinion that it's so important to understand the core processes behind it, because exceptions are going to come up. We're not sure what's going to be truthful. Customer relationships, supplier relationships, like that all has to be managed in person, realistically. So needing to understand the processes behind it is still going to be so important, that I'm still very bullish on learning SAP from soup to nuts, really.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you can make obviously a whole career out of that, learning SAP, and you never run out of things to learn. What do you recommend for anyone that's looking at Joule, that's looking at AI agents in that sphere of SAP? Where should they get started, or how should they get started, and how does it tie back to the core modules at the end of the day?
Totally, totally. I think if folks are already in a core module, it's kind of like drilling down and thinking about it. So, for example, if you're in materials management, like how will that impact my purchasing processes, right?
Hmm.
So, will it, if I have a purchase requisition, will it propose the right supplier for me, and how will I differentiate that? So, I think exposure to any AI prompting is going to be really useful. So, working with Claude, working with ChatGPT, and then once you can get into Joule, really testing it. I know that the SAP Learning Hub is introducing more and more Joule practice systems as we go here. So I think even the last time you and I talked, they didn't have access to that, and that's recently been added to the Learning Hub. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I think exposure is the key.
Hmm.
A wide breadth of exposure.
So it sounds like your recommendation is make use of the resources that are there that you might already have access to and stay current on what's new, what's coming out. Maybe try it out in a sandbox if you can. And
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and take courses like even if you're an SAP focused person, take courses like yours to get exposed to like how it's being used across industries and how it's being used at different organizations. I think really a wide range is important.
Well, that was a very nice plug. Thank you.
Just folded that in there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we said we have two converging topics, so that makes perfect sense. Yes. No, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Any change that you introduce to the organization creates some level of friction, creates some level of pushback, and managing that up front is so key. I remember by now, I think it's about 8 years ago, I worked with a large life science company while I was working for SAP, and we're working on finance processes. And what this customer did really, really well from the very beginning was involve their shared service center teams in South America, in Eastern Europe, to say, hey, look, we're going through a change. Here's why we're doing this, because we're seeing so much volume that you need to handle on a daily basis. If we can automate some of the things with machine learning back then, that means we free up your time, and we're genuinely looking for ways to free up your time so you can work on things that you're not able to do right now and that we are not able to do right now. And while I feel there's so much lip service out there, and especially these days with AI motivated, AI driven, AI associated layoffs, for me it was really exciting and encouraging to see that this company actually stay true to their words. So they got a whole different kind of buy-in from the shared service centers. They were part of the project. They were involved. They gave feedback. We looked at outliers. We looked at things during hypercare and steady state. In just just very good to see how good projects are run, and not just, hey, we're going to do this, we throw it over the fence, good luck, now it's yours, and run with it whether or not you like it. And you know that's the other side of what can happen too. And so now managing this, how do we build trust? How do we know that these AI systems, that these agents actually do what they're supposed to? I think that's a big transformational change. That's a big change professionals, SAP professionals, IT professionals, but also business users um, need to get more comfortable with. So to no surprise, some of the things take a little longer. But again, if it's about mitigating your risk, that's clear. Right?
I love what you said there about a project where they're just leadership's being transparent with their end users and saying, yeah, your role is going to shift here.
Mm-hmm.
You have safety in that your role will exist after this. So let's be part of the same team and build towards this goal. And I do think that is going to happen with once more organizations take on Joule and take on the autonomous enterprise.
Yeah.
I like, as long as there's transparency that we're still going to need you to maybe manage the work as opposed to like being in and processing the work. I think that's going to be the shift. But as long as organizations are transparent with their end users, I think it can be really successful.
I think so too. And at the risk of diverging a little too far from our original topic, but with all of this promise of more autonomy, of more AI, of more agents, of more automated decision making, I think at least in the US, what I'm seeing is this misconception that AI is going to replace people and we can cut cost. To me, that means we are sacrificing future growth at the benefit of cost savings. But those people that have industry knowledge, that have your product knowledge, that know your customers, maybe you have some customers that are only your customers because they have a good relationship with your customer success rep or salesperson. If you let them go because you think agents are going to run your entire business, I think you're sacrificing future growth. So I'd much rather see the narrative also amongst leaders shift towards, well, what else can we do? How can we 10x our output, our productivity, our new product development with the help of AI, knowing that we have capable people in our business.
Yeah, totally. It feels like the market at large is using AI as an excuse, and that's kind of leading to this fear. It's a bit of a fear flywheel, if you will, of
Yes.
So.
I think it was just the other week that I was reading an article. The tech leaders are so surprised that there's so much pushback against AI from Gen Z saying, I don't want this stuff. I want to be creative. I want to think. I want to learn. I need to know all these things by myself. I don't want to have AI feed everything to me or be trained on somebody else's proprietary data that they're not being reimbursed for. That's one thing, right? But then with all the doom and gloom and some of those narratives, I think it's not a huge surprise that there's more pushback against building out data centers in your backyard and all these kind of things. But
yeah,
we're
absolutely
digressing a little.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to digress, right? And touch on these other topics when you look at it more holistically. Question for you. Let me see. Obviously, this is unscripted, so Justin has no idea what I'm going to ask him. What's the one thing that gets you excited when you look at AI in the SAP context, whether it's things like Joule, whether it's capabilities, whether it's something where you say, oh yeah, this is cool. This is going to get really, really good. And that's something that I'm looking at because I want to become more knowledgeable and more informed on how this works.
I think for me, one of the fascinating parts is the supply chain, where I feel like AI is going to be able to be backward looking at historical data, and then it's also going to be able to be forward looking at what the trends are like, especially like in the production planning space. Like, are there macro supply chain indicators that are going to impact my business? Pulling that all together for one person or one team seems impossible, and a lot of the organizations I've worked at just don't do that today. So that feels like an optimization promise at this point, but I can see it coming to fruition where it could really improve a lot of businesses and make them work a lot better, a lot less spoilage or things things like that. It's kind of exciting from a macro view.
I mean, there's definitely a lot going on, and like you said, with that potential of how can we run our business better, how can we optimize our supply chain, all the things that have gone in there as well, with integrated business planning and similar tools, right? It's pretty impressive. What do you cover in your courses there, specifically on production planning, for example?
Totally. For production planning, we cover a lot of the materials requirement planning. So it's a kind of a broad overview on what that looks like, but there's been several iterations on what's called MRP and SAP, and having the right components available to produce what you need to produce for the right amount of customers and the right amount of demand. And I feel like that is really going to get supercharged with AI. That's in my learning SAP production planning course.
Fantastic. I'm an adjunct professor here just outside of Philadelphia, and I teach production operations management. So I have a sweet spot for these kinds of topics, and especially when you can find some good and tangible demos that you can show. So the things become more concrete, or even things like your courses. Now I'm thinking maybe that's something, a couple of videos out of those that my students could benefit from and learn from. How does this actually work in the real world?
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's your exposure to the young students, or if they're just getting like a change in career, are they excited about what they're seeing in AI for supply chains?
A little bit of both. So they're excited because they can see how easily things can be done now. They have a lot of exposure to it. They use it for studying in all sorts of things, but they're also worried and concerned that, hey, does it mean I still find a job when I graduate here in a
Yeah,
year, or are all entry level roles drying up, or the same people are applying for the same scarce roles? And I think that kind of captures where the market is right now anyways pretty well. Unfortunately, the scarcity of open recs to, hey, AI can do a lot of the work, and it certainly can, and will do more. But generally, like I said, there's more a positive attitude towards it, I would say. But I'm also always surprised, positively surprised, at how critically students are thinking about this.
really.
And that's specifically when we look at data, when we look at where does the data come from, how have AI labs gotten access to the data, what are the models built on, things like hallucinations or generic
Mhm.
output. Those are some things that I'm including in my courses too. And by the way, the first one here, how agents augment human skills in the workplace, is one that I asked my students to take first time last semester. I'll do that again in the fall, because it's a good level set of how should you use AI, whether in the workplace or during your education, without delegating too much autonomy, without delegating too much of your own thinking and accountability to it, because otherwise, if
Mhm.
you're not involved, you end up with a lot of slop and low quality information, and you're not really retaining anything. And I think that's part of the big challenge, whether it's in education or in business today too, when it gets so easy that these systems can take over part of our tasks and work. What do we do if they are not working, if they're not available? A couple of months ago, I remember Copilot not being available, and people said, "Oh well, I don't know how to do this," or
Can't do anything.
this is throwing a wrench in my productivity, and now I need to do this manually again. So the kind of dependency, and then also how do you build skills? How do you become an SAP professional in the future? What does it mean to be one? Do you still need to know SAP basis? Probably yes, right, to some degree. But I think the stack gets a lot deeper, and we keep layering new things on top. So managing and understanding it all the way from basis administration to
Mhm.
what is Joule, how do these autonomous agents and apps work, what makes sense. I think it's a pretty big ask as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. I have a question for you because I feel like you're uniquely positioned
Okay.
to give some advice. I feel like some folks from my network that would be watching this would be, what do I need to do to prepare my organization to bring AI over into SAP? And I feel like you have this
Hmm.
deep background in SAP and in AI.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to say, a CTO at a large organization that's bringing it over?
So what I've seen, both while I was working for SAP, but also now in my work as an independent AI advisor, is pick pick a problem where you have a clear sponsor that has a budget, that has an interest to see their KPI improve. Doesn't always have to be cost, right? It can be output, it can be a reduction of scrap rate, it can be a process performance indicator. How long does it take us to create and send out the invoice, or how long does it take us to receive cash, and many many others. So usually, if you find this trifecta of sponsor, budget, and common interest to improve a KPI, that's a good starting point. What I'm really encouraged by is seeing that SAP, I think over the last year, has made this huge catalog publicly available of what are the AI features in SAP's product and portfolio that you can benefit from. So as a second step, recommend look at those. Which products do you already have in your environment that you can take advantage of? Maybe there's AI already built in and you never tried it out. You don't even know it's there. Go look at the catalog and you find out. Also see what else is available that you can benefit from, whether it's on the business technology platform, business AI platform now, um, or that you can maybe even pay for with the credits and other subscriptions that you have. So looking then at what's available and what does it look like commercially, I think those are the first three steps. and then talk to your systems integrator, rep, trusted consultant on how can we actually get started. But to me, it all starts with this value discussion and identifying what actually makes sense and what moves the needle for our business function. Because without that support, you're just spinning your wheels and you're, kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and try to see what sticks.
I love that. I love the idea of kind of starting very focused in getting a proof of concept, and then, I mean, then you could probably get more buy-in from the organization at large if they're seeing a win and on a specific KPI, like you mentioned. I love that. I think that's a great answer.
Yeah, thanks. And if I may add, and I've been consistent there for probably the last 10 years. If you find an AI feature, use case, product that you can bring into your organization that's already built, right? SAP makes a lot of components available out of the box. There are many more coming, whether it's situation handling in S4 or it's the RPA templates, or it's now Joule skills and agents and whatnot. Start with these things because you will still need to manage the change around it, bringing it to the organization, figuring out what's the value, how do I get my business stakeholders on board. If you start with let's build something from scratch, you've added a whole lot more time and complexity
Yeah,
to that process. But if you take something that's pre-built, and even if it's just for trying it out and see how does this work, and we go through that process, you're saving yourself a lot of time and a lot of headaches.
that's really smart. Yeah, I do find a lot of SAP customers try to reinvent the wheel with their processes are unique, but especially with everybody needs to collect their in finance, right? They all need to do their accounts
Yes.
receivable. So there's a lot of things that are pre-built that are
Right.
overarching
Yeah.
for so many organizations.
Yeah. I mean, there's one Joule skill or agent that comes to mind. Something around dispute management, dispute resolution. That can be a great way to start it. I'm sure if you run your finances through SAP, you'll probably have some disputes and customers disputing your payments or sorry, your invoices. So start there and explore what does it look like. Do some A/B testing. How does it work without AI in the loop? How does it work with Joule in the loop and see performance metrics, benchmarks, time saved, things like that. That's usually a good starting point. But again, start with the business stakeholder that says, yes, I want to work with you. I have a need, I have a budget, and I want to see this KPI improve.
Do you see that a lot with your in your individual consulting, where the sponsor is so important that you need that buy-in for it to be successful?
Here's the beauty that the same three things they apply to any software, to any standard software, whether it's SAP or others. So yes, they do apply there too. And what I see a lot of times is, hey, our board says we need to do AI. CEO says, hey, CIO, or in a tech-focused business, CTO, go figure it out. You've always worked with data and applications and IT systems. Go figure out what we do with AI. And then they usually approach it like any other IT project. Sure, by now we've moved from waterfall to agile, fine, but that's not the big differentiator. It's the hey, we're looking at this through a technology lens. But if you broaden your scope and your sphere and you pull in the business from the very beginning and you find allies that go into this project shoulder by shoulder with you, that's where you see the success, as opposed to hey, let's see what we can do with this technology and maybe we find a problem for that solution that we have.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Same as it ever was, huh?
Right. By the way, that's the other thing I keep coming back to with a lot of experts, whether it's in the IT, SAP, or AI space. Actually, not so many things are different these days. We just call them AI, or AI is a new technology and a new lens through which we look at this. But the same concepts that we've been talking about for 10, 15, 20 years, they still apply, especially when it comes to change management.
Yeah, just the new layer on top, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one last plug, folks. If you want to learn more about the amazing world of SAP and leveling up on S4, the basics, production planning, financials, Justin has some awesome courses out there. And if you want to find out how can I bring AI agents into my business, consider taking some of my courses as well. Give us a follow on LinkedIn. Like we said, we're very active there. Always looking to make new friends across the globe and be helpful. Justin, I know this has come together on very short notice with very, very little preparation. So I always like having these impromptu conversations and see where we can take with a topic like this. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Maybe before we wrap up, what's the one thing that you would want to leave our audience with today when it comes to SAP agents, bringing things into the business?
Andres, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. This has been great. And I think the one thing I would leave with would be to expose yourself to as much as possible, as many tools as possible, and then get narrow from there. Especially when you're learning this and bringing it into your organization. I think that's really the key.
Awesome, wonderful. I love that. So definitely keep learning. Like I said, consider our courses, and if you're thinking about how do I manage this change, reach out to Justin or I for some trusted advice and what we're seeing in the industry. So again, Justin, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time and for your expertise.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, see you next time for another LinkedIn Learning Office Hours. Bye-bye.